Good afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In today's session on symbolic expression, we have with us Ms. Manisha, who is going to translate the lecture in sign language. The topic for discussion today is sociological thinker. We will be discussing the work and theory of Talcott Parsons. Talcott Parsons was an American sociologist, and he, as a sociologist, is placed between the classical and the contemporary sociologist. So when Parsons started working in terms of thinking about the society, he was in between two kind of areas or context. One was the classical theoretical approach, which was kind of divided into utilitarian, idealist and positivist. And the other was the larger political intellectual discourse that was going on. So Parsons tried to bring around all these theoretical instances into one grand theory. So he classified sociological theories into three groups: the utilitarian, the idealist and the positivist. Now the utilitarian, as the term itself suggests, are those who see social action in highly individualized fashion. Individualized fashion in the sense that the focus is on individual human behavior. They will not be able to understand the collective cohesion. They will not be able to understand why there is a pattern or why there is a structure in society. That is why it is kind of looking into the individual's interest, utilitarian. The second is positivist. Now, positivist is kind of the school of thought that comes in from Auguste Comte, who is the founder of the discipline of sociology. And as discussed in the earlier lecture, positivism was an approach to create a science of society. So they were looking into actors who were kind of having the complete knowledge of social situation, because it was looking at society. It was trying to look into how society could be studied by sociologists. And then we had the idealist. The idealist, their mind plays a very important role, that is ideas, and for them society exists because of certain pre-existing ideas. So ideas play a role in the constitution of the world and its experience. Now when we look into Parsons, we see that most of the time he was concerned with the major question. That question was, how is society in order? Now, there could be two ways or two answers. One, that it is from the self-interest that people are kind of focused towards working together. The other could be that the individual interest is directed towards the larger. So, society will be kind of playing an important role in deciding how individuals act, and that is from where Talcott Parsons gives us a bridging of the macro and micro sociological structure. So in his major book, The Structure of Social Action, he develops a systematic theory of social action. Initially, it was voluntaristic. So for him, it is both the agency and the structure that will interact in order to produce a action. That is, an actor will decide or will take a choice depending on the values, the norms that he or she has inculcated from the society. So, social action is based on the idea that there are multiple choices available, and depending on the values, depending on the larger societal constraint, an individual will choose one action over the other. So Talcott Parsons is basically kind of giving us a midway between the whole idea of agency and structure. If we look into the classical sociologists, they were more focused on the structure, that is the collective. Marx was talking about modes of production, Durkheim was talking about the social solidarity, collective consciousness. Talcott Parsons says that it is both agency and social structure that kind of determines the social action of people around. The second kind of an argument is that when he develops his theory of action, he is arguing that social phenomena must be understood in terms of individual meaning, and at the same time, the meaning has to be analyzed at the level of collective action among groups of actors. So, how I do or how I behave in a particular situation is not only my individual decision, but that decision is dependent on my socialization, on my interaction with other members in the society. So, action has to be understood by both the individual behavior and personality in relation to the larger whole. So, his action theory is based on the assumption that action is voluntary, intentional, symbolic, and institutionalized. In his second major work, The Social System, Parsons kind of gives us whole idea of looking at all these theories around into a grand theory. And since each of these theories are talking about the society, about some element of the society, he is preferring to use the term social system. And here he makes a distinction between social system and social structure. So, each family is a social system, and within that family you have network or kinship relation, which is the structure. And in order to understand or in order to build a theory, we need to look into the interaction between social system and social structure. So, when we talk about social system, it is manifested through the totality of principle through which roles and related elements of social interactions are organized. So, every social system will have individuals who are assigned different roles. Now, these roles are kind of dependent on how the individual will act out or will interact in a larger group. Social structure, on the other hand, reflects specific manner in which these roles in an interaction are configured and composed together. So, when we look into Talcott Parsons and try to understand, we need to understand how he was developing these sociological theories, because he was trying to understand a large gamut of society, and he had a number of precedents, number of theoretical thinkers around. So, he is developing his theory of social action, in which he would be looking into a number of ideas and number of institutions. The first theory which he developed was the theory of sick role. Now, when we look into sick role and why it becomes important is that he questioned the fragmentation of discipline into natural science, social sciences, and he was of opinion that these fragmentation of knowledge is kind of false, because sick role, which is kind of assumed to belong to biology and medical science, is also something that a sociologist is interested in. Why? Because when we look into a sick person, his interaction with the others will tell us that being sick or falling ill is sociological or a social problem. So, if a person falls ill, we know the structures within the family is affected. Every role is kind of determined according to the relation that individual has with the sick person. So, a sick role is a concept that concerns the social aspect of becoming ill and the privilege and obligations that come with it. His main goal was to utilize multiple social science disciplines to create a universal theory of human relationship. And in that, when we kind of bringing in all the disciplines together, so he is trying to build a grand theory. And what is a grand theory? It refers to any theory that attempts to offer an overall explanation of history, social life, and human experience. So he was kind of playing a very important role. So he's kind of reading Marx, Weber, Durkheim, and he's kind of trailing that these different schools of thoughts could be brought together and create a grand theory that will give us a holistic explanation of society. He played a crucial role in terms of developing this grand theory, which was an attempt to integrate different social sciences into one theoretical framework. And why did he want to do this? He felt that grand theory integrated not only sociological concept but also psychological, economic, political, religious, and philosophical component. So he is kind of doing away with these divisions. He is doing away with the sociological division of positivist, idealist, and utilitarian. He is doing away with the distinction between natural science, social science, and the fact that any institution or any object that we are studying can be understood by looking at its interdisciplinary, from history, from philosophy, psychology. Each discipline would contribute into some element of understanding the social reality. So he is making an attempt to explain all social behavior everywhere throughout history and in all contexts with a single model called structural functionalism. Now, structural functionalism considers values to be the core of culture. Why? Because values give meaning to what people do, directs people's life, and bind people together. Values can also be referred as cultural trait. So we know that each society or each culture has a set of its own values that differentiates it from the other, and it is in terms of the value that is learned or internalized that our behavior depends upon. Parsons believed that all lasting social systems strive for stability. So if we look into functionalism as an approach in sociology, we know that functionalism was trying to make us understand that the entire whole can be divided into different parts, and each part plays an important role to maintain the equilibrium of the whole. So equilibrium, stability, and contribution of each part is the essence of functionalism. Now, when we look into functionalism of Talcott Parsons, he was concerned about social order. He was influenced by Durkheim, and is trying to understand how is a social order and equilibrium maintained in society. So, the functional theory of functionalism studies roles of institutions, social behavior in the society, in the way that these are related to other social feature, and developed explanation of society in social terms. As a functionalist, Parsons was concerned with how elements of society were functional for a society. He argued that order and stability in the society are result of certain values in society rather than in the structure as in the economic system. So he is kind of taking us away from Marx, where Marx says that if the economic system is kind of integrated, there will be order in society. So he is believing the focus on the social institution, where he talks about the family as an institution, and he gives the functional explanation of family by looking into the role of socialization, how socialization functions to maintain the values and norms of the family. When we look into Parsons' functional theory, the AGIL model becomes significant. He has given this AGIL model, which he called as the functional prerequisite of a social system. That is, every social system, there are certain prerequisites for maintaining order and equilibrium. And what is AGIL? A stands for adaptation, G for goal, I for integration, and L for latency. So when we go into adaptation, we are familiar that it is something which helps you to get adjusted or adapt to the physical and social environment. How individual as member of society becomes a part of the society. Goal attainment, every member of the society has to define a primary goal, and in attaining these primary goals, we have a number of secondary goals. So, individuals' goals together would help us to attain the society's goal. Now, when we have adaptation and goal attainment, the third is integration. In order to ensure that the society is integrated and order is maintained, each part has to be integrated. There has to be a relation of coordination and interdependence between different parts of the society. The fourth is latency. Latency implies motivation. How motivated are individuals to maintain order in society? So, how will you kind of be motivated or ensure there is motivation? By doing the role assigned to you, so the performance of the role according to social expectations will ensure motivation in society. So, we know that his sociological theory is around the concept of social action and social system. Let us look into some of the key concepts that are important to understand Talcott Parsons sociology. First is theory. What is theory? Now, theory is a system of law grounded on empirical generalization. So, you find out some kind of a pattern of the structure of the social system and then kind of build a hypothetical statement which after research and finding could be empirically generalized. Second concept is action. Action indicates a relation with external object which is justified and significant for the actor. So, action is basically the behavior of individual. Now, this behavior has to be justified, else it will be dysfunctional, and it has to be for the benefit of the larger whole. Now, when we have action, we also need to understand who performs that action. It is an actor. An actor is intended both as a behavioral system and as a personality system. Why? Because actor would be the person who is performing the action. So, the action will depend on his or her personality and how the individual behaves. In the second sense, that is the personality system, the actor is subject provided with knowledge. So, you have a personality. How is your personality built? The personality is built by acquiring certain knowledge, and that knowledge is therefore kind of internalized and acted out. So, we also have this concept of unit act. The unit act was basically kind of a pattern of interaction. So, it is individual's action is not automatic according to Parsons. It is based on a stimuli and it is also dependent on the mind and consciousness of the individual. So, the four things constitute an unit act. One is a social actor, a person, a family and occupational group. Number two is a goal, which is the end. Why are you doing this action? Because you want to achieve a goal. Third is concrete situation. You need a situation in which you will act out in order to attain your goal. It could be a physical condition, it could be a social condition, it could be kind of environment. All these conditions which determines the situation. The fourth is the value, which is the most significant. You have to have a value orientation which regulates the relationship between these elements, and this involves investment of energy, motivation and effort. So, when we look into the whole idea of Parsons sociology, we know that he is kind of focused in developing a sociological theory of social action, action which is not only based on individuals' desire or choice, but this choice is conditioned according to the society in which the individual is placed. So, with this whole understanding of theory of Talcott Parsons, it will help us to understand how we look into behavior, how we look into the idea of how a particular person is behaving in one manner other than the X. So, this brings us very close to C. Wright Mill's whole idea of biography and social context, that your idea of what you are, your problem, your private problem is basically a public problem as well, because it is arising out of the context in which an individual is placed. So, with this I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.